Moving on to discussion of possible action regarding the field use agreement for Columbus United, which is 14A. And obviously there's a lot of you here, and I'm sure some of you are going to want to speak. Maybe if you know of one or two of you that can get what you want to say across, and I'm sure that we'll get the gist of it. And I will certainly let you begin if you could state your name and address.
My name is Eric Stoller. I'm at 1076 Putney Drive in Columbus, Ohio. I'm counsel for Simon Davis, who is a Township resident and a business owner. Chairwoman Toronto, Trustee Knapp, quickly, Ms. Ross, McCarthy, and Mr. Bernard. Thank you, first of all, for moving us up on the agenda. We really appreciate it. A lot of people here that are interested to see how this turns out, so we appreciate it, especially with the young guys. Appreciate the courtesy of that. And we are here before you this evening on the field use agreement issue. This is something that I'm here today with Simon Davis. Each of us will have a presentation. I'm going to kind of walk through what I think are sort of the legal aspects of it, if you will. Simon will be probably a little bit more practical than I will, but I'll try not to go too long with my time, but I think that there are some legal pieces to this that I'd like the trustees to understand. The issue was not resolved in the June 20th meeting. There was testimony heard by Jim Waters, associated with Super Kicks and Classic Eagles, and then with Michael Lentz, who is associated with OIAA. The testimony from Mr. Waters and Mr. Lentz, particularly Mr. Waters, suggested that Columbus United had come before the trustees seeking the field use agreement with what I would describe as unclean hands because of an alleged zoning violation at the field, or at the location that Mr. Davis rents from Dennis Hamilton. That's at 7910 North Central Drive here in Lewis Center. That is a separate property. Obviously, that is a property that is owned by Mr. Hamilton, leased by Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis runs his operations out of that location. That's separate aside from what we're here today to discuss, which is the field use agreement for the township owned land. But in that prior hearing, the two individuals suggested that we had come here with unclean hands because of this alleged zoning violation. And at that hearing, basically it was not resolved. Between that point and today, there was a hearing before the Board of Zoning Commissioner Appeals, and I believe Mr. McCarthy would have been present at that meeting. And that was I was actually at that meeting. I was not representing anybody in particular at that. I was here for Mr. Davis, but I wasn't speaking because his landlord's attorney, Scott Schaefer, was here, except more of a landlord zoning type of an issue. But as I think anybody that was in attendance at that meeting would agree, that issue is less than a clear issue. There is and this is with respect to the 7910 property. I think the unclean hands, the suggestion of that is not with merit. This is a property of 3.5 acres. Mr. Davis leases. This is a property within it's the Orange Point Commerce Park that's zoned planned industrial. There is a 3.5 acres that is upon which his property sits. Years ago, when the zoning was actually enacted, it was designed as open space. That was back in the 60s. In the 90s, there was actually a building that was constructed there on the building, on the property. Zoning was applied for, was approved by the township. So I think there was sort of a large misunderstanding, or just really not quite a complete understanding as to that property and the fact that it was supposed to be open space. Since that time, that building has continued to be there. It's continued to operate a business. And Mr. Davis had recently, last year, cleared out some fields that he was operating as soccer fields on the portion of the 3.5 acres that is not being used for the building business. And actually, that particular project was actually presented and you know, signed off by the township engineer. So we actually, when we were proceeding, you know, with those fields, we didn't realize that there was a violation here, and it wasn't until Mr. Waters had pursued it with the trustees that this really kind of came to a head. So there was, you know, there was not any kind of unclean hands, and we are continuing to try to resolve that. Whether it's through, we're still hoping that there's an opportunity for a variance, if not perhaps conditional use, or perhaps even we can get the property rezoned. There is support from the neighboring property owners, you know, as you know, the immediately adjacent property owners, as to Mr. Davis's business there for the soccer fields, everything else. So we're gonna continue to pursue that, and just wanted to get across the fact that the notion of unclean hands was really misfounded. Moving on to the field use agreement itself, unless anybody had questions as far as that 7910 property.
You said that zoning had approved it, someone from this office had approved?
This was back in the 90s,
In the
so there was a
90s, okay.
zoning permit that was, and I have a copy of it.
Okay.
If anyone-
Council, you're referring to a 1993 permit, and that was for a zoning permit, that was not for rezoning, however.
Correct. It was the paperwork that would have been filed when the building was built. It was described as a zoning, the document itself was described as a zoning.
Have you seen the material that Mr. Ray prepared that addressed the status of the situation with that permit? You can get that, it's not a trick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that question.
Well, Mr. Ray, Anthony Ray, the planning and zoning director, reviewed the situation, and his determination is that permit was issued in error.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's where we are.
I'm sorry, that what, Mike? I
It
couldn't
was
hear you.
issued in error.
In error,
That
okay.
it should not have been issued.
The building permit, or the zoning permit for the
I would also
building?
indicate that this is not in Orange Point. This is in Proprietor's Commerce, which became North Central Office Park. So they're two different zoning districts, which also impacts this in a way you haven't had to deal with. But beyond that, what relationship, if any, is there between Columbus United and something called Three Lions Soccer?
Columbus United is a 501c3, if anybody would like to see the 501c3.
No. I take your
Got
word for it.
documents there, let's see. Columbus United is the 501c3 that operates the soccer program out of the 7910 location. And there's a travel program that's run through Columbus United, and there's other teams that are run through Columbus United. It is a 501c3. It's a not-for-profit, obviously. Three Lions is a, I don't know if I'm misstating this, but it's a trade name that is part of Simon Davis LLC, and that is, there's actually a league that is run through Three Lions. Three Lions is that's the entity that basically that any one of the soccer clubs around town needs to be associated with a program to be able to play before in these leagues such as Muscle and Buckeye Travel and those type of things. So the predominant soccer operations are run through Columbus United.
Is just to clarify for my benefit, I've dealt with youth soccer, I don't do it anymore. So is Three Lions essentially flying under the Columbus United flag, or vice versa from what you're saying?
Yeah.
Three Lions Soccer was started as an indoor training facility. Identical to Super King, so it's different. Exactly the same. They do individual training for kids from any club.
Mr. Davis, could you just state
Yeah,
your name
sorry.
and address for
Simon
the record?
Davis, 3184 Waukegan Avenue, Lewis Centre. So Three Lions, business location 7910 North Central. So Three Lions Soccer moved in there, and it's an indoor training facility. Rents out to different clubs, also does its own programming. When the need for wanting to try and rent space wasn't available, we looked into doing the field. The land outside looked like a prime opportunity to have some space to use. So we created that. A lot of people in the came to me begging for a soccer club because they needed an alternative to what was already here, because there wasn't one. I was working with the Township Trustee, and I started then Columbus United as a community soccer club. Columbus United then is affiliated with Three Lions Soccer to be able to join the leagues. You have to
So
have
you're
a
flying
rec-
under their flag?
You have to have a recreation program. So I created a recreation program, Three Lions Soccer. The recreation programs for like 4 to 8 year olds. By having that, then the league called Mosul will now allow teams to play just like Classic Eagles, joins with OYAA. It's their rec program, Three Lions Soccer.
So they're the select team and you're the rec side.
Correct. Yeah, so
Is there
Columbus
any-
United is a select team. Yeah.
Is
And
there
they
a
don't.
formal affiliation between the two then?
There is an affiliation between the two for league players.
Okay. Council, you may be old enough to refer to this back in the day, but there was an outfit called Club Ohio Dynamo that started in Dublin and essentially ended up running the outer belt trying to find a home as far as what I was trying to do. Okay,
This
so
is-
you folks are the rec program.
Three Lions Soccer is.
And there's some loose affiliation that allows that select program to bootstrap off of you.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I've been curious about that.
It's confusing. Youth soccer is very
It's getting a little
confusing.
confusing.
I know, very confusing as well.
And so your BZA hearing was tabled, is that correct? The BZA
Correct.
hearing, right? What
Correct.
date was that tabled to?
That was tabled to August 18th, I believe. Is that 17th or 18th?
You're getting ready to talk about the field use
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah, so as to the field use agreement, Columbus United is seeking to obtain the approval of the trustees to enter into a field use agreement that would have a term from August 1st, 2016 today through October 31st, 2016, and then be afforded the same treatment in the spring and then thereafter. We believe that the section that is cited in every one of these field use agreements, in section 511.03 of the Ohio Revised Code, gives us the right, and in fact, arguably gives us a preference as to other organizations to use those fields, to enter into the field use agreement and to use those fields. In particular, we even think that we would have preference over the Classics Eagles organization. And the purpose of what I'm about to go into is not to in any way discredit the Classics Eagles organization. They've been a good organization around town, but when we are fighting, it appears, for limited space around the township as to the use of fields, and this being an issue that Classics Eagles folks really largely initiated, I want to kind of walk through why we think that we should have a right, and actually even a statute of a preference as to those.
Let me just stop you there for a minute. Beth, do we have room for them to use the fields in the fall?
Yes.
We do have field space,
Well,
correct?
I actually talked to Simon in 2015. He had come to Township Hall, requested some field space. At that time, we had Glen Oak was available. And that was after Ms. Taranto and I had actually gone to 7910 last July of 2015 and informed Mr. Davis that they could not be operating outside uses in the industrial zone. He had requested some field space, but hadn't provided any information until later in the year, looking for spring of 16. In spring of 16, when I brought the field use agreements to the trustees in February, Columbus United was actually on the agenda, but it had been pulled because this designation between Lions and Columbus United was not ironed out. They wanted to sign an agreement under Columbus United, but provide insurance under Three Lions. Since then, that has been cleared. When we brought it to the board for a field use agreement, the zoning discrepancy came up, and there were some questions. That's when the board had tabled it, looking for zoning information.
And you said that you informed them that there was a zoning violation?
Ms. Taranto and I both went to meet Simon at 7910 and told him last July that that's after they had cleared the field, and I can't remember, I think Tom was involved. I think is he the one that called you? I remember you called me and asked me to go out because it was a soccer issue.
I'm thinking, it's hard to go back that far. I'm thinking that Tom wasn't here, and I ended up calling Mr. McCarthy, and we did quite a bit of research. You had to do quite a bit of digging, and at that point, I don't remember if Anthony was back in then, but we kind of handled it.
September.
So it would make sense that
It might, because that would be a
question
zoning.
had come in about.
Yeah, I
That's
think
a zoning.
council has laid out the history here accurately. Mr. Ray's looked at it, I've looked at it, he's looked at it.
But they.
That's the situation we're facing
Right,
now.
but normally the zoning inspector would be the one that would inform him that there was a violation.
Right, there
Correct.
was
Yeah,
a
we didn't
vacancy,
have one,
right.
right.
Inspector at the time.
Well, so, I mean, I don't know if we even have to get into all that, because if the trustees do not disagree with you having the field use agreement, and we'll go ahead with it, which I don't know how anyone else here feels, but I'm fine with allowing you guys this fall while you're trying to go through your zoning issue and resolve it. I'm totally fine, me personally, between the three of us, with you guys going ahead and being allowed to use it, because I see it as a completely separate issue. So I don't know how the others feel, but I don't know if it's necessary to go into all the other stuff, unless you want to.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think the only thing we would ask is that if the trustees were to vote for Homeless United to have, enter into a field use agreement for the fall, we would like to have the same ability to come back and do the same thing in the spring, and then, and thereafter. This is a club that's continuing to grow, and we think that the statute really clearly lays out that we're entitled to, just like the YAA is, but to a preference by the trustees as to those field use agreements. The fact that he has a field on his property, to me, that is a separate issue. I agree with that. I wouldn't want that to jeopardize it in the future, that if we get that resolved, then suddenly we're out of contention for the field use agreement with the township.
I see what you're saying for the spring.
I'm happy to
That
leave
makes
that
sense.
for another day as well, as long as that's.
Yeah, so would you, Mr. Simon, would you be having the practices at the fields and the games at the township fields and the practices you're having practices at your outside? Yeah.
At Three Lions.
Yeah.
Three Lions is where we majority do a lot of our little kid soccer, because sometimes it's cold and rainy and they don't want to be outside in there, so we bring them in.
Okay.
We also have goals that we have to build up, but we're able to keep them inside there, and we can get out of the doors and take them out so the guys can play, which wouldn't be possible if we had to go somewhere else. It's just with that ability to offer that and look into the community probably wouldn't be a possibility somewhere else. The way we run it a little bit differently than other organizations. We mainly use our location as a training space because of the fact it's always available. We're able to offer the community a lot more there than we can in parks. Many people have expressed how much they enjoy it because of the fact we can just put things on Saturdays and Sundays and not worry about disturbing the residents and taking up park space. It's all a separate area that isn't being used. So we generally will play some games there, but literally maybe each team might play 4 games a season, so maybe 12 games over the course of 3 months between 3 teams, and then the rest of it is just training space that we'll use inside and outside. And then over at Glenwood, we'll be doing a similar sort of thing, having a field that will be used for games mostly on the weekend, and then during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and sort of times, we'll be looking to do our training sessions.
Okay, so the same age groups are different age groups
Yeah,
using the
we have
field?
13 teams now in the club, so we're looking to try and spread them over 3 locations, so that way we don't overuse or overpopulate one area with 150 families showing up at one time. So that's our aim at the minute, is to try and get 3 spaces, one being with you guys, one being ourselves, and then one through the school board, and the school district fields.
Well, it is possible that this goes through zoning and you're denied as we discussed, your use permits are very difficult to obtain. I've seen a couple within since 1998, so they're very hard to get, but there's still the opportunity to rezone it, or maybe there might be something within the paperwork that we're not aware of that an attorney could look at, but.
We did do the change of use when I spoke to Michelle, so that's what she recommended to do. So
Yeah,
she
they
said,
use
do
it,
this,
yeah.
And go that route, and then if we need to go a different route, we will. So we wanted to try and be open and say
Yeah.
what we need to do.
It was my understanding that you were in a severe zoning violation and you were flagrantly violating our zoning and not pursuing it from what I was hearing originally, but I've
Yeah.
obviously changed my mind on that. so.
Yeah, it was I never get the mail, because I never get mail, like we never get mail there, so I don't get the mail. And then every month or so, I'll be like, oh, just clean it out basically and get rid of all the junk mail.
Because you have a landlord.
Yeah,
correct, that
we
gets
just
the
don't
mail.
get mail sent. I get my mail sent to my house, and no one gets mail sent to our locations. It's just always junk mail. So when I think the township had sent the violations to Mr. Hamilton, and it didn't,
Oh, the
it got
property
returned.
owner,
So it didn't actually reach him, so he didn't know anything about it. And then once I got the mail after like a month, I saw a letter to him that I opened from the township. And then I contacted him, and then contacted Michelle immediately. That same day, I came to the office. It was like, hey, I'm
Right
sorry.
away, okay.
I was we didn't realize this. And yes, Mrs. Hugh and Mrs. Franklin did come to the fields, but I never heard anything more from it. It wasn't they came there and said, you had to stop using this. It was just, we're going to look into it. And never once was anything then
Okay.
brought back to me.
For months,
So I wasn't
a
like,
year, yeah.
oh, ignoring what they said. I respect you guys, and I wasn't going to do that.
So what, I mean, I guess it would be a separate issue. I would be fine with issuing you, especially being an Orange Township resident and being based here, I would be fine with you agreeing to this fall and spring, because I do think that that's a separate issue. And worst comes to worst, the county prosecutor would pursue a stop order against you, and they would stop you from practicing at that facility, like if you decide not to pursue the zoning. I think they're the opinion, as long as they're trying to get through the zoning, that they're not going to do anything from what they're saying. So I consider it to be a separate issue, but of course, if you discontinue trying to resolve the zoning, then they would shut you down.
Yeah, we want to.
That I'm totally fine of guaranteeing you that space, if there's space available,
I
but,
think at the last meeting, I believe that the concern was the fact that there was the probability that more or less we were being ignored when it came down to the fact that we were sending letters, they weren't being answered, and it was more like, okay, we're just going to continue what we're doing. And I think that's the reason why the entire board agreed at that point. Let's take a step back and figure out what's going on. With that, the question, you can take a look at this saying there are two different issues, but there's still both an issue on the table. One, you need fields, and I'm all supportive of that. I think, we can do what we can to make that happen, but the question is that field is still in violation, and it's in violation. Because of the reaction of the board last time, my proposal was, yes, let's move forward, and I talked to the township administrator trying to find a compromise there, because the board saying at that point was that why don't we go ahead and allow them to use those fields, but if you agree to stop using that field that's in question, because until that's resolved. Just because that is, it is a violation. The township zoning inspector is not going to stop pursuing that because it is a violation, which means eventually you're going to get a letter again. So the question was, what I was looking at is that compromise to give you the fields that you need so that, everybody gets to play, get things rolling and make it happen. But if you would agree to go ahead and at this point stop using that field for the time being until that's resolved.
no, wait, that was discussed at the last meeting, you're saying?
No, I was saying that was a compromise that I was looking for
Oh, okay.
since the
I
last
didn't remember
meeting
that.
because of the board's reflection of what was being discussed at the last time.
My worry, obviously I appreciate what you're saying. My worry is we're too big for that park. If we could take North Orange Park, we'd be okay. We wouldn't be upsetting people. There, I feel like we're going to upset the residents as soon as we show up because we've got 150 people and that park cannot take 150 people.
Yeah, we have a severe shortage of soccer space.
And the last thing we want to do is go there with the first time it being used really by an organization and then all the residents being like, this can't happen. We can have a park, they're everywhere. That's my biggest worry and concern is, do we have anything that can accommodate size?
Well, and that violation is actually, it's not in the township's hands right now, it's in the county prosecutor's hands. So the zoning office cannot and is not doing anything about it. It's in the county prosecutor's hands. So I personally spoke with them at length last week, and they said they're not going to most likely do anything while you're trying to resolve this.
And our view would be, we would ask that if we could continue to try to resolve the issues on the field. And I've had conversations since the last hearing with the BPA. I've had conversations with landlord's attorney. We have every intention to continue to try to figure out how to resolve the issue. We're not going to just let this issue die. So we would ask that because of the hardship that it would cause for Mr. Davis's club, that we be permitted to continue to use those fields as well as the Glen Oak fields during the time that we're talking about.
Well, they're completely separate issues. I mean,
They are.
I think that you are being punished in a way for, in my own opinion, I'm one of three, but I think you're being punished for having the zoning violation even though you're attempting to resolve it. And my thought is, what's next? Would we deny your family a pool pass? Are we not going to come to your house when you call the squad? I mean, what other services are we going to deny you because you are in violation of zoning right now? I'm not sure where to draw the line.
Yeah, and
the
again-
zoning violation, I think it's debatable, to be honest. The definition for open space in the, in the zoning, in the zoning rate or the zoning statute as it was enacted, it calls for open space, it calls for, for vegetation. It's got a green field, it's got vegetation on it. There were trees that were cleared to make the space, and, and that where that project actually went through the township office, we're.
Excuse me, Councilman, you say it went through the township office. Which office?
Well, I guess it went through the engineer's office.
Well, we don't have an engineer. The county engineer may have reviewed it, but it was not reviewed, to your knowledge, in this building.
The county engineer would have reviewed it.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
I would question if I could have that name, because actually when it was being cleared, I called up because I was concerned about the road pitch along Graphics Way when you started to put in irrigation, and I couldn't find anybody in the county engineer's office that knew anything about it. And it may just be
Yeah,
that
that would be
I spoke to the
something-
wrong person, but he would tell me who
That's a
reviewed the
landlord.
plans.
That's the landlord, he dealt with all that, he was the one who did that project.
Could you share that information with Mr. McCarthy so that he can take a
Yeah,
look at this, what plans were reviewed?
Request that.
Because you're going to be giving all this is kind of more BZA information that you'll be presenting it's good information to have though, but more information will be presenting to the BZA, hopefully to try to resolve that. And there might be some kind of circumstance that would grant you an ability to use that. But regardless of that, if you decide, if they turn you down and you don't do anything, the prosecutor's office will put a stop order on it. And then, but that's separate from us. To me, it's separate. I don't understand trying to punish you when we have a huge amount of community members who are you're filling a need that's very great. There's not enough, there's just not enough field space. There's not enough people that are able to keep fit and, enjoy outdoor recreation. There's just not enough space.
And this is the club that is 90% Orange Township kids.
Oh, is it? Okay. That's good. That's good to know.
If you look around there, there's great support. The fact that this number of people are here tonight, roughly equal amount of people were here at the BZA meeting a few weeks back. So there's significant support here. These are largely township residents. So I think that obviously if the prosecutor were to tell us that we had to stop, stop right then and there. But we would ask that the trustees consider the fact that that this is a growing club, largely township based, local resident, local business, local kids who are, and this is getting kids outside. This is getting kids exercise. This is good for the community. And as Trustee Knapp says, separate issue. If the prosecutors are going to do in the future issue a stop use order, we'll go out and comply. But until then, we ask that you allow us to leeway.
Right, and that has been handed over, like I said, to the prosecutor's office. It's in their hands, so we don't have nothing to do with that. So we aren't going to get any trouble if we allow you to continue to use it while you're trying to resolve it.
Excuse me, if I could, I'd just point out it's really not appropriate, in my opinion, for this board to express a condemnation of the zoning violation that's issued by the zoning office. I think that enforcement lies with the zoning office and the prosecutor's office and should not be brought into this meeting.
Well, that's what they're saying. Well, that was the reason we told them that we're shutting them down. We're not going to allow them to use the field.
Well, I
It's because they're in
understand.
a
I'm
zoning
just saying
violation.
that I get the sense it's being asked for this board to condone the fact that
No.
use will continue.
No.
And I don't
No,
think that
no,
it's
they're
in the
looking for a
pros-
separate.
Yeah, they're in the
Yeah, if they're separate
prosecutor's.
issues, keep that one out of here.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
it's in the prosecutor's hands and they'll be handling it, but if that's the basis for us denying it or tabling it, then we sure as heck better be addressing that here.
Well, if you wish to proceed forward, I would suggest proceed forward with the field use agreement, but do
Exactly.
not get into.
Well, I'm ready to move forward on the
condemnation.
field use agreement right now.
So, just reiterating what I said prior, is that the entire board last time was presented what was transpiring. They all agreed at that time to put table it until we got more information. I was looking for that compromise. That's why I was presenting, trying to figure that out, but I'm glad to see that, the possibility is probably just to get the field use agreement moving is there with the board right now. So, you know, Trustee Toronto, I don't know what your opinion is right now. Yeah, so I think because of that, since the board now has a little bit more understanding, that it appears to me that we're in agreement that will allow you to use it, field use agreement. We're not going to mention anything else right now. We're just going to stick to the field use agreement portion of it. And so with that, I don't know if there's a resolution.
And just to mention, Mike,
Yeah, we'll have to change it.
Mike, I did make it clear to Mark that I would be discussing this at this meeting tonight.
That's fine, I'm just saying that for this board to take a formal vote or indicate its group consensus that the zoning violation is just
No,
fine.
we aren't gonna do
Is
that.
inappropriate.
No,
And I think
that
it
wasn't
seems the
even a-
technical, legal
Yeah,
authority
that
of
wasn't
this
even,
board on its own.
wasn't even a possibility.
You know,
But
the
they wanna
rezoning,
make-
if
That'll
there is a
happen,
rezoning,
yeah.
that ultimately will come back before
Yeah,
this
it
board.
wasn't a
You'll have more
possibility.
discretion, you probably won't.
So, but would we allow them for the spring, they have to know for the spring and the fall in order for them to go
I
ahead?
think the spring is a separate contract. Yeah, the spring is one.
We do,
Fall
the way
and
I've
spring.
done the system is, and this is the first year, actually, we didn't really have competition for the fields because we could fit all of the requests. I take the requests at the beginning of the year, we look at what those requests are, we look at the fields available, and we try, and so far, knock on wood, we've been able to accommodate everyone that has asked for field space. As it grows, that's always been in question, that would come to the board. That's one of the reasons we're looking to build 4 more fields at North Road, come to the Parks Board meetings. So, you know, we know that soccer's growing. We're anxious for that. We've been planning for it. We're just not there yet. But potentially in the fall of 17 or 2018, we'll be playing on additional fields at North Road. So,
And you do have that information that you were mentioning about the preferential, that would come into play later if you can't, I would leave that for
Yeah.
later, just for,
We feel no reason.
Okay, yeah, no reason to bring it.
If you want
Okay.
some reason to bring it back.
I would have just one question, just for clarification, so that when we speak of one field, and this goes unilaterally across all the field uses, when we lease a field, we lease a full-size soccer field. If you or OYA, not I-9, decide we're going to play the little kids and we can divide this up into 4 fields, that's 4 fields. So if you're looking, well, he has 4 fields and we only have 1, it is 1 full-size soccer field that's leased. So however they decide to divide that up in whatever groups and things that goes on, that's how that's done.
I didn't want to surprise you guys.
Right,
We talked about it like, oh, you know, we
Right,
did
so
say 2.
you would
Like, I
be
didn't want to
leasing one
surprise you,
field,
yeah.
but for our conversations, there's two different size fields that can be set up at Plano.
so we will grant them the one for the fall, and then we'll, in spring, they'll just come back as anyone else
We
would.
would look at those requests for 2017 at that time.
And we would not prejudice, again, have a prejudice against them, I assume. Their zoning should be cleared by then, I guess. I guess we'll know.
My concern, and I expressed this at the last meeting, my concern was that there's been communication, if the zoning wasn't being followed, I have concerns about the park rules being followed. And Simon really kind of brought it up, when you bring 100 people into Glen Oak, I'm going to get complaints from people that are used to the quiet there. They live next to a park, it is a leased field, it has always been scheduled to be a leased field, and anticipated like that. They're used to, so far, most of these are new homeowners, but, you know, they are used, this is where our sledding hill is, so the park does get inundated with people. You know, we just ask that you be respectful in picking up your trash, you know, playing within the hours that you have, which are, you know, specifically scheduled to accommodate the park neighbors and things like that. So as long as you're following the park rules, I'm good.
And I'm assuming they would be just as good as any other group in following the park rules. I'm assuming, correct? Especially because you're Orange Township residents, you're gonna be better, right? Yeah, thank you.
That was one of the first meetings I had, was how you have to make sure you respect the fields that we're going to
Our residents are very respectful in general, I believe, so.
Whereas the Columbus United Soccer Club, United, a domestic nonprofit corporation, has approached the Board of Township Trustees of Orange Township, Delaware County, Ohio, regarding the use of playing fields at the board's Glen Oak Park. Now therefore be it resolved that the Maintenance and Parks Director is authorized and directed to pursue a discussion with United regarding a field use agreement agreement for the use of fields at the Township's Glen Oak Park for soccer training and related purposes during the 2016 fall season. Be it further resolved that the Maintenance and Parks Director shall bring any resulting agreement before the board for its approval prior to the agreement being effective.
Second.
Ms. Trumka?
Yes.
Ms. Knapp?
Yes.
Mr. Quigley?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Can we take a recess?
Excuse me,